I'm going to try to be very concise because there is an interlink between energy and digitalization or artificial intelligence, and the challenges are huge. The increase of energy demand would rise in two sources: more devices, more data centers, cloud services, and IoT networks, but also for higher economic activity. As we can see in the graphic, just in the next 10 years, we're going to go from what is now 18 billion different gadgets to almost 40 billion in just a period of 10 years. There are different scenarios on how much energy is going to be needed. We have McKinsey that has been used in many presentations, and we have also the International Energy Agency, and all of them talk about at least 5 to 9% of energy demand. Are we capable of supplying that? There is a very interesting graphic from McKinsey study, which clearly shows how the rest of the world and the emerging economies are focusing on the industrial use of energy, while North America and Europe are focusing mostly on data centers and the use of digitalization. The demand is huge, not only in the United States, but also in Europe. This poses a conundrum. On the one hand, we have high energy demand, which is going to strain the EA revolution. And on the other, greater demand will also affect or have an impact on the energy transition. However, digitalization may also be part of the solution in bringing more renewable sources and the entrance of this kind of energy to the system. What is the challenge? There is greater CO emissions. The use of fossil base is going to increase because there is not enough renewable sources produced. Data centers cannot rely only on the technologies used by renewable sources because they are intermittent, as you well know, and they require a current supply of energy. People have been talking about the need for fusion or nuclear energy. But we are talking here about huge numbers. In the United States right now, there is only 53 nuclear power plants. To meet the demand for the next 5 years, we will need more than 100. And we have, just for the United States, and we have plants that go from half of a gigawatt to 3.9, the largest one. So more than 100 1-giga plants. And some of the large companies are already talking to about 10-giga plants or data centers that will consume that amount of energy. However, digitalization is also part of the solution in two ways: efficiency and renewable integration. Grid management optimization is fundamental. We have several examples, especially in Iberia, but a lot of investment is needed. More than 750 billion investment is needed on the grid in just 5 years, just in the United States. In order for us to meet the investments required for a net zero globally, around 650 billion, and in Europe, around 600 billion. There are a lot of government strategies currently taking place in Europe to try to supply that. What are the different countries doing to decarbonizing the grid in Europe? TCOs are using innovation and digitalization, new technologies like dynamic land rating, advanced control, grid-forming intervals, and digital twins. The idea is to reduce the carbon footprint. But most importantly, is enabling renewable generation to be integrated into the grid. But not only that is needed. We require market integration and cross-border flows. I have been in an alliance where they have the United States, Canada, and Mexico for interconnections both in natural gas and electricity. And the challenges, the political and administrative challenges of interconnecting countries are extremely complicated. And this idea of just looking at decarbonizing the grid without working at the same time on policy, it probably will give us bottlenecks in the future that will limit the possibilities. We need to work also on the regulatory framework. Even in Europe, where we have similar laws, we have to work towards this harmonization of the legal system. And financing. A lot of money needs to be invested. Rod already mentioned these huge figures in order to maintain the pace of the artificial intelligence revolution. So the challenges, very large investment, the fact that energy demand at this size for sure is going to bring fossil fuels back again into the demand of the large companies. Nuclear is going to be back into the table as well. But just imagine that, how feasible is to build 20, 30, or 40 nuclear plants in Europe in the next 5 or 6 years. Forget about Germany, just in Spain or Portugal. So those are the challenges that we are facing. Cross-border coordination, digitalization, storage, offshore integration are the solution, are the sort of strategies we need to pursue. But to be very honest, we're just in the first steps of that. A lot of cooperation, a lot of diplomacy, a lot of work it needs to be done. And regional difference also in technology and infrastructure may constrain the process. We were discussing a few moments ago about Latin America and the potential of Latin America, but also the challenges of putting it all together. One of my clients is Redeia, which is the transport and connectivity company in Spain. One of the most advanced ones with some of the best grid system in Europe. They have invested a lot of money just in 2024 and in 2025, almost 40% more has been invested. They have enhanced the stability of the system. They have developed cross-border interactions and interconnections, and they have been using some of the green bond financing to improve their capabilities. Around 47% of the energy produced in Spain is renewable energy. And despite all that, most of you will know, a few months ago, we have a terrible blackout for almost 12 hours that paralyzed the whole economy and affected Portugal and even some parts of France. So the challenges are there, and the issues also need to be taken into account in order to develop a sort of holistic strategy to solve the problem. What about this idea of Atlantic Basin strategy, the possibilities? What is needed? Investment, technology, regulatory alignment, environmental safeguards, and most important, international partnerships and agreements. And let me tell you that I have been in one of the negotiations between Peru and Chile in a line which is only 20-something kilometers. It was going to be paid by Inter-American Development Bank, but politics didn't make it feasible because the position of the different actors was so distant and so complicated. To think that we can do that in the whole of the Pan-American system is at least challenging. And I don't see any real efforts to work towards that kind of consensus. North American and South Atlantic Basin is feasible, as well as North and South in Europe and Africa, as we can see that. But in terms of interconnections, yes, in the Pacific, in the Atlantic Basin, we just have the Morocco and Spain one, and two other ones, Egypt and Greece, which is developing, and another one with Tunisia and Italy, which is also developing. But that's not enough. That is not enough to take advantage of what is happening in Africa and the possibilities they offer. In terms of North America and South America, we also have to remember that many of the countries in South America are oil and gas producers countries. So in their priority, in their government income, this is a priority that probably will distract some of the efforts done in the past on renewable sources. But at the same time, the same region is also a very powerful force for the supply of renewable energy. This is a picture of the European-African relationship. There is a European Commission ruling on electrical interconnection requiring its members to have at least 15% of interconnection capacity related to the installed generation. The reality is no one is fulfilling this. It hasn't been a priority, a true priority. And we cannot have a pan-Atlantic view of things without these interconnections. Here are some of the examples, the main power pool and the integration level in different regions in Africa, as you can see. The West Atlantic, Senegal, Nigeria, Namibia, Angola are the high ones, but areas or countries like Congo and Cameroon, which are low integrated with the rest of Africa, they're highly integrated with Latin America and now with Europe, thanks to these submarine connections, line connections. So this offers a real possibility for the future. What about North America and South America? The problem is, and I used to coordinate all the efforts, 20 years ago, between Canada and the United States, there were something like 20 different interconnections. They have grown. But the same 11 interconnections between Mexico and the United States remain today. In 20 years, there have been very little growth in terms of the capacity to connect those economies. Central America, the grids are smaller and they are less robust to have a truly grid that interconnects all the Americas. And the possibility is in South America, especially in Brazil, with Eletrobras, which is producing almost 100% of its electricity on renewable sources. And they are connected to Africa on the one hand of the ring and to Europe in the other. However, much needed interconnections are required. They are not connected to Colombia, they are not connected to Argentina, or very little, and the possibilities for the Brazil and Uruguay or Paraguay are very limited due to the fact there is not true interconnections. Politics play a very large role in economics, especially politics or diplomacy in having this holistic or Pan-American view. On the other hand, the Latin American energy mix offers great possibilities. The whole region produces a lot of green energy. More than 51% is hydro, but geothermal, solar, and wind energy are very relevant too, more than 70%. So it's an opportunity for Europe to meet the standards they are looking for, and even some regions in the United States, by using these possibilities of interconnection. What is the action plan for decarbonizing the Atlantic Basin? Well, the use of digitalization to decarbonize in the grid, and the possibility to integrate more and more renewable energy. We need to build new transmission lines, and we need to develop interconnection. But the problem, as Pablo will know, that is capital intensive too. And people try not to focus, the companies don't focus too much on that. The technical and regulatory alignment between these countries is needed. Sometimes we're talking about the same thing, but they are defined and regulated very differently. And we need also harmonization in the grid codes, in the markets, and the cross-border rules. More than anything, bottlenecks. Within the countries, there's still a lot of bottlenecks, and especially on these developing economies. So we need first to find a way to solve those bottlenecks before we really can talk about an integrated pan-Atlantic response to the high demand the artificial intelligence is driving. At last, diplomacy and diplomatic cooperation. We need to involve policy actors. And the benefits, they are very clear: security, economies of scale, renewal, regional variability, complementarity of renewable sources, cross-border trade and flexibility, and decarbonization. I end my presentation by calling for policy action. We need other stakeholders to be involved. The infrastructure people, the people in government, the people in the energy industry. I have here all these wonderful possibilities and all the potential of the artificial intelligence revolution, but let's have it very clear. There is no artificial intelligence revolution without electricity. And I've been working in the other side. That takes money and time, a lot of money and a lot of political will. If we don't start to work on those issues, on financing, on building consensus and harmonization, and on building a sort of a common view of the challenge, well, we probably could face really a lot of limits of what artificial intelligence could do for the economy and the global society as a whole. Well, thank you very much for your time and your attention.